Hello, welcome to a new tutorial presented by the SHLDB. In this tutorial, we are going to see how the nervous system is applied with respect to anatomy. So this tutorial will give us our introductory phase toward nervous system, toward the nervous supply in anatomy. It is very necessary for you to have an introductory phase to the nervous system, else it will be very difficult for you to understand the concept of ganglions and nuclei with respect to all the nervous supply with the head and neck. So let's start. First point to note is that the central nervous system is divided into two main parts. We have a somatic nervous system and we have an autonomic nervous system. The somatic nervous system is involved with all those things which are voluntary. All the nerve impulses which are voluntary are transferred to the somatic nervous system. On the other hand, all the nerve impulses which are involved with involuntary action are in autonomic nervous system. Now, the next one we have is motor somatic. You need to know that somatic nervous system is divided into two main parts. We have motor component and we have a sensory component. And the autonomic nervous system is divided into two main parts: the sympathetic system and the parasympathetic system. Now, important points come around when you want to study each of these different latter divisions. Motor somatic system, we need to note that with motor neurons, the characteristic of motor neurons is that they are multipolar. Multipolar neurons have their cell body at one point, they have their axon and they have their latter portion of the cell body. So you realize that with any cell, any tissue or any nerve which are going to be comprised of motor neurons, they are all going to have the cell bodies of the motor neuron in the central nervous system, that is in nuclei and not in ganglia. So all the cell bodies of motor neurons are found inside the central nervous system at the level of nuclei and not in ganglia. So nuclei. Now, sensory somatic system. Now, the sensory nerve have a contrary characteristic. The characteristic of a sensory nerve, a sensory neuron, is that it should either be unipolar or bipolar. Now, unipolar and bipolar neurons have their cell body out of the central nervous system. So at one point they have dendrites. At the middle, they have the cell body. With unipolar, they are entangled out of the axon, while with bipolar, they are directly connecting the dendrites with the axon. But all of them are going to have their cell body out of the central nervous system, which are not in ganglia, which are not in nuclei, but in ganglions. So any nerve which has a sensory somatic type is going to have a ganglion. That's the conclusion. And that ganglion will be a sensory ganglion. Now, going up to the autonomic nervous system, we have the sympathetic system and we have the parasympathetic system. Now, with the sympathetic system, what do we realize? We realize that sympathetic system have ganglia, and the ganglia are located only close to the vertebral column at the level of the sympathetic chain. Now, this is the first thing, that they have ganglions and their ganglions are located close to the sympathetic chain. Now, the reason why the sympathetic system have ganglion is not that they are unipolar or bipolar, but instead that they are forming always sympathetic. The autonomic nervous system always form ganglion upon their movement to the organ they supply. The next thing is the origin of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic system. The origin of the sympathetic is thoracolumbar. So any part of the spinal cord which is thoracic and lumbar are going to give divisions for the sympathetic system. For the parasympathetic system, the origin is craniosacral. So the origin of the parasympathetic system is craniosacral, and their ganglion are located close to the organ they supply. So now, question: which autonomic nervous system originates directly from the brain? Is it sympathetic or parasympathetic? The answer will be parasympathetic, because the origin of the parasympathetic is craniosacral. Question number 2: does the head and neck have sympathetic nerve on it? The answer is true, because the eyelids open permanently due to the contraction of the sympathetic nervous system. Number 1. Number 2 is because the iris is become dilated due to the action of the sympathetic nervous system. Number 3 is the ciliary body with the ciliary muscle contract to increase the size of the lens by the action of the sympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system act on the head. Question number 2: where does the sympathetic system which act on the head originate? The sympathetic system which act on the head does not originate from the head. It originates from the thorax, because you initially said that the sympathetic system is thoracolumbar. Again, let's come with parasympathetic system. Question: are the parasympathetic, which are the nerves which are going to contain the parasympathetic system? Now, there are 4 main nerves in the head which are containing parasympathetic fibers to the head. The first one is the oculomotor nerve. The second one is the facial nerve. The third one is the glossopharyngeal nerve, and the fourth is the vagus or the vagal nerve. So these are the 4 main nerves which are carrying parasympathetic fibers. And a point to note is that the trigeminal nerve is always a hitchhike of one of the parasympathetic fibers. Sympathetic system, the question is, how does the sympathetic fibers comes from the thorax to the head? We initially seen the initial tutorial how blood circulation was moving to the head, and blood to the cranial fossa was via the internal carotid artery. The sympathetic system is going to be carried by the internal carotid artery and its branches for it to supply the head and its other structures. So that's a brief introduction to the central nervous system, the central nervous system. So this is nervous system and not central nervous system. So nervous system is divided into 2 parts. So at this point, we remove central nervous system, but instead nervous system. Now let's move to the next portion. Cranial nerves. Now we need to know that there are 12 main cranial nerves. First cranial nerve is the olfactory nerve. Second one is optic. The third one is oculomotor. The fourth one is trochlear. The fifth one is trigeminal. The sixth one is abducent. The seventh one is facial. The 8th one is vestibulocochlear. The 9th one is glossopharyngeal. The 10th one is vagus. The 11th one is cranial accessory, and the 12th one is hypoglossal. Now, before we start the study of each of the nerve, it is good to cram first to memorize the order of the nerve coming in descending order. It is useful for you to cram this order or memorize this order because this order is similar to the origins of the different nerve from the brain. The olfactory nerve originates directly from the frontal lobe and part of the parietal lobe. The optic nerve originates directly from occipital lobe. The oculomotor nerve originates from the midbrain. The trochlear nerve originates from the junction between the midbrain and the pons with the trigeminal nerve. The trigeminal nerve also originates part at the level of the pons. The abducent nerve originates at the level of the pons. The fascial nerve originates at the pontomedullary junction between the pons and the medulla with the vestibulocochlear nerve. Then the glossopharyngeal nerve originates, and all the rest of the nerve originate at the level of the medulla. So you see that when you are taking from this C1 to C12, we are going from top to bottom, and if they are located at the same position, like in case of the fascial and the vestibulocochlear, which are located at the pontomedullary junction, you see that they are at the same position. Now, to differentiate which one will come first as cranial nerve, we say that the one which is much more medial will be the one which will be the first cranial nerve, and the one which is much more lateral will be the next one. So the fascial nerve is much more medial than vestibulocochlear. Now, mnemonics need to be memorized in this section. Some say money matters, but my brothers say big brain matter most. B in this mnemonics means both sensory and motor. S means sensory and M means motor. So this is the first one. For the first cranial nerve, S, we have some. So olfactory is sensory. Second cranial nerve, optic nerve is sensory. Third cranial nerve, money, M is motor. The fourth cranial nerve is motor. The fifth cranial nerve is sensory and motor. The sixth cranial nerve is motor. The seventh cranial nerve is sensory and motor. The eighth cranial nerve is sensory. The ninth cranial nerve is sensory and motor. The 10th cranial nerve is sensory and motor. The 11th cranial nerve is motor, and the 12th cranial nerve is motor. So it implies that you already have their basic function in your mind. The olfactory nerve the main function is to take impulses for olfaction, impulses of odors from the nasal cavity. That's why it's sensory. Optic nerve, the main impulse is in vision. That's why it's sensory, and the type of sensory here is spatial sensory and not general sensory. Spatial sensory because they are involved the sense organ. Olfactory nerve involve the sense of smell. Optic nerve involve the sense of vision. Oculomotor nerve is motor. So you see that from the name you have oculo, it implies that it will be in the eye. It's motor to the eye. The trochlear nerve still is motor to the eye. Now, we need to know that the motor nerve to the eye are summarized with a certain formula. We have LR to the base of 6. LR to the base of 6. We remove the base. SO to the base of 4. And it will be all into 3. We remove the base here. All into the base of 3. So now this is a formula for the innervation of the eye. This formula LR6 SO. This formula LR6SO4 all into 3 is a general formula for the innervation of the eye, where LR will mean lateral rectus, SO4 is where LR is lateral rectus, and SO is a superior oblique. So you see that the LR is supplied by the sixth cranial nerve, and the sixth cranial nerve is going to be the abducent nerve. SO will be supplied by the fourth cranial nerve. Fourth cranial nerve is the true cranial nerve, and the all into 3, it means that all the others which are not lateral rectus and superior oblique are going to be supplied by the oculomotor nerve, which is the third cranial nerve here. So all this motor, this is why all of them, the oculomotor, trochlea, and the abducent, are all motor. Now going to the next motor, we need to begin to know that other muscles of the eye will consist of the medial rectus, consist of the inferior oblique, we consist of the superior rectus and the inferior rectus. So these are all the rest which are supplied by the oculomotor nerve. We also the levator palpebrae superioris in order to elevate your superior papilla to superior eyelid. Now the next one, you have the trigeminal nerve. Trigeminal nerve is sensory and motor. Now question: initially above here, above the first page, we initially agreed that sensory are unipolar and that they have their ganglion out of the central nervous system. So now it will implies that all the nerves that you see having sensory will have largely ganglions inside the central nervous system. This one, its ganglion, the olfactory one has a ganglion called the olfactory bulb. This one, the optic nerve, have ganglion called the geniculate ganglion. So the optic ones here have ganglions called the geniculate ganglions, where they are going to have their sensory portions here. The trigeminal nerve has a ganglion called the trigeminal ganglion, located at the lateral portion of the sella processa. Now the fascial nerve also have a ganglion. So the optic nerve has ganglion called the optic ganglion only, and the fascial nerve has ganglion called the geniculate ganglion. And the ganglion, the geniculate ganglion, that's going to supply for the sensory portion of fascial nerve. Now trigeminal nerve, we need to know that all what is general sensory on the head is going to be due to the trigeminal nerve. Everything that is sensory, that is general sensory on the head, is mostly on the face, is mostly due to the trigeminal nerve, where upper portion of the eye will be due to the ophthalmic part of the trigeminal nerve. From the eye to the upper portion of the mouth will be the maxillary part, and below the lower lip it will be the mandibular part. So these are the three main parts which are involved with sensory of the trigeminal nerve. Now on the scalp we have the greater occipital nerve, we have the lesser occipital nerve, and we can have sometimes at times the greater auricular nerve, which are supplying posteriorly. And laterally we have the oculotemporal nerve, which supplies, which are the trigeminal nerve. Now the next portion will be the fascial nerve. Fascial nerve has and trigeminal nerve has motor to all the muscles of mastication, as we have seen in later tutorials. Fascial nerve is sensory to, we see that the fascial nerve is sensory to the anterior two-thirds of the tongue. So the posterior two-thirds of the tongue is the glossopharyngeal nerve, which is sensory there and motor at that position. But the anterior two-thirds of the tongue, the fascial nerve is going to be sensory via the chorda tympani. It's going to be sensory via the chorda tympani. Why the sensory of the fascial nerve on the anterior two-thirds is the spatial sensory. That is, it is used to taste, the sense of taste. So on the anterior two-thirds of the tongue, when you are tasting a salt and you are saying that it is salty, it implies that you are using your fascial nerve via the branch called chorda tympani to sense it. But if you are eating food and the food is hot, and then you sense that it's hot, you are instead using the trigeminal nerve to sense the hotness or general sensation of that anterior two-thirds of the tongue. So now let's continue again. This facial nerve, this is essential to the facial nerve is motor to all the muscles of the face and all the muscles of facial expression, and it's also motor to the stapedius muscle. Vestibulocochlear is a sensory nerve mostly in use in audition. Glossopharyngeal nerve is sensory and motor, and it's mostly sensory in the palate. Glossopharyngeal nerve is sensory in the palate. It's also slightly sensory at the level of the pharynx, at posterior two-thirds of the tongue, and at the upper part of the pharynx. That's why it's called glossopharyngeal. And it's motor. The glossopharyngeal, you need to know that it is motor to most of the muscles of the pharynx. In the muscle of pharynx, we have different muscles of pharynx. Number one, we have the constrictor muscles, which are the circular muscles, and we have the vertical muscles. The circular muscles, we have superior, medial, and inferior constrictor. All those circular muscles are supplied by the vagus nerve. But in case of and also in the pharynx, we need to know that they are vertical muscles. The vertical muscles are the salpingopharyngeals, the glossopharyngeals, and the stylopharinger. These are the three main vertical muscles. Vertical one. The glossopharyngeal nerve is going to supply the third one, which is salpingopharyngeals. The vagus nerve, I've already initially said, is going to be sensory to upper portion is going to be sensory to upper portion of the larynx and lower portion of the larynx, and also going to be motor to most of the muscles which are used in speech and the muscles which are used in the pharynx for deglutition. So accessory cranial nerve, accessory cranial motor, we need to know that the spinal accessory is used in the contraction of the spinal accessory used for the contraction of both the sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius, while the cranial accessory is what accounts for the vagal motor stimulation. And lastly, we have the hypoglossal, which is mostly used in all which is used in the muscles which is used to supply the muscles of the tongue, except the palatoglossus, which is supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. So these are the main nerves which are involved in the head. Now, the next point to note is that we have only studied this nerve with respect to the somatic nervous system. Now, let's study the nerve with respect to autonomic nervous system. The first point to note is that the nerve are not going to be sympathetic system, because the sympathetic are coming via the internal carotid vessels. The nerves are going to be studied with respect to parasympathetic system. And because the parasympathetic system is craniosacral, so it has some origin in the cranial portion. Now, I initially told you that there are 4 cranial nerves which are parasympathetic in origin. So we have number 1, the oculomotor nerve. The oculomotor nerve has its motor nucleus, which is the oculomotor nucleus, and it has a parasympathetic nucleus, which is called the edingavespal nucleus. And that parasympathetic nucleus is what is used by the oculomotor nerve for the sensation of accommodation. Accommodation is not an action which is a reflex which is performed due to a voluntary act. The accommodation is performed due to involuntary act, and it is via the oculomotor nerve that is being performed. So the edingavespal nuclei send impulses via the parasympathetic nerve in order for the contraction of the muscles in the ciliary bodies for the lens to be contracted. And also, it's also used in the light reflex. When you send a beam of light, you see that your iris is going to contract, and it is also via the edingavespal nuclei which send the parasympathetic fiber in the oculomotor nerve. The next nerve, which is parasympathetic in origin, we have the facial nerve. The facial nerve takes its origin from a nuclei called, for a parasympathetic origin, from a nuclei called the superior salivatory nuclei. So the superior salivatory nuclei is the one which is going to send the fibers or the parasympathetic fiber in the fascial nerve. You need to know that the fascial nerve has its own nuclei called the fascial nuclei, which has both the sensory and the motor origin. But the parasympathetic origin, which enters into the fascial nerve, is called the salivatory nuclei. And now, by hearing the word salivatory nuclei, you see that parasympathetic fiber is the one which is involved with our salivation. Question: when you see food just in front of you, you cannot control your salivation. The saliva just come out as due to the intensity of the flavor of the food. So salivation is an autonomic act. Now, the superior salivatory nuclei is the one which is going to send the impulse via the vagal nerve. And now, we need to know that we initially said that the parasympathetic fiber have ganglia, and their ganglia are close to the organ which are involved. So now it's going to form a ganglia close to the submandibular gland, and that ganglia is going to be called the submandibular ganglion. So the ganglion that is going to be formed due to the parasympathetic supply of the fascial nerve to the submandibular gland is going to be the submandibular ganglion. Also, the fascial nerve also transmit the fascial nerve also transmit stimulation to the lacrimal gland in the eye. So these are the two transmission. Also transmit a supply to the lacrimal gland of the eye, and that is via the sphenopalatine ganglion or the pterygopalatine ganglion. Now, the next nerve which has parasympathetic origin is the glossopharyngeal nerve. And the nuclei involved with the parasympathetic origin of glossopharyngeal nerve is called the inferior salivatory nuclei. So from the word you see already that the glossopharyngeal nerve is also involved with salivation. Now the question is, from which gland is going to be involved in that salivation? We need to know that there are three main glands inside the mouth. We have number 1 the sublingual gland, number 2 the submandibular, number 3 the parotid gland. The sublingual gland and the submandibular gland are both supplied by the submandibular ganglion from the superior salivatory nuclei. Now we need to know that the last one, which is the parotid gland, has no supply, which I have already said yet. So the glossopharyngeal nerve is the one via the inferior salivatory nuclei which is going to supply the parotid gland. And now we need to know that the ganglion in the supply of the parotid gland in this case is going to be called the otic ganglion. The last nerve which has parasympathetic origin are going to be the vagal nerve, and the parasympathetic origin is called the vagal nuclei. We need to know that the vagus nerve is actually a strong parasympathetic fiber because it's going to move across. We initially said here that the parasympathetic has a craniosacral origin and the sympathetic has a thoracolumbar origin. So the question I need to ask you again is, what is the parasympathetic supply which is going to be at the level of the thorax and the abdomen at the thoracolumbar region? So you see that the parasympathetic supply which is going to move across the thoracolumbar region now is going to be due to this great nerve, the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is mostly the one which is going to supply all through, it's going to pass through the head. In the head it does not really have parasympathetic supply, but in the thorax and the abdomen, with all the basic structure, maintaining the heart rate reduced, maintaining the lung rate, maintaining the abdominal content motion, maintaining all these involuntary acts which are parasympathetic in the with the dilation of blood vessels at level of the internal portion. All these are made sure by the vagal nerve. So these are the main nerves which are parasympathetic in origin. From here we can enter a conclusion that we need to know that the nervous system is divided into two main parts: somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. And the somatic nervous system, autonomic nervous system should be studied in precise direction, as we have seen in these different words, these different texts below. So when you have studied this in this precise notation, then you can go forth by studying the different anatomical constituents of the nervous supply in the head and neck. From where we are going to pass to the next tutorial called the nervous supply to the head. Thanks for your kind attention.